If you lived through the 1980s, you remember the Joan Rivers Show. Back then, live television was something else entirely. Everything was real, every moment unpredictable. And that evening, when Sylvester walked into the studio, those who thought it would be a normal interview were mistaken. Maybe you were at the TV that night too. Maybe you danced to Sylvester's "You Make Me Feel Mighty Real." But what you learned that evening would give his music a whole new meaning. Because behind the stage lights, there was an untold love story. And Rick Cranmer's family would learn that story at the same time as us, in the same way, live on air, in shock, and completely unprepared. But before we get to that moment, there was a 5-year mystery nobody knew about. And that mystery would change a man's life forever. Before you continue listening to this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Because we'll keep bringing you more untold stories from the dark corridors of music history. In November, an invitation came from the Joan Rivers Show. Joan was known for bold questions. And it was live. "Come with me," Sylvester told Rick. "Let's tell the truth." Rick froze. This is career suicide. Patrick died without living his real life. Rock Hudson died, his lover couldn't mourn at the funeral. "I love you. The world should know. But your career. You are my life." The week before the show, Sylvester couldn't sleep. The record company warned about the morality clause. Sylvester smiled. Real image is honesty. December. New York was cold, it was snowing. Sylvester had chosen a plain suit, no sequins, no feathers. Rick also dressed plainly. The producers at the studio were surprised. "Rick is going on the program too," Sylvester said. The producer said, "But he wasn't in the plans." Sylvester smiled. Plans changed. Joan Rivers came backstage. "Sylvester, darling." Then she looked at Rick, curious. She seemed to have sensed something. "I'm going to say something special today," Sylvester said. "I hope you're ready." When the studio lights illuminated Sylvester's face, the audience stood up. Applause, whistles, cheers. Joan Rivers greeted them with a wide smile. Sylvester waved to the audience. But Rick stood a step back, more quietly. They sat in the chairs. The first 10 minutes passed with standard questions. New album, tour plans. Then Joan asked, "How's life off stage? Are you happy?" Sylvester stopped. He looked at Rick. Then he turned to Joan. "Joan, I didn't just come here today to talk about my music. I've been living in a lie for 5 years. I can't stand it anymore." A deep silence fell over the studio. The production crew looked at each other. The cameras zoomed in. "For 5 years, I haven't shown the world my real self. And now, I can't take it anymore." Joan Rivers looked surprised. "Sylvester, you've always been an authentic artist. What lie are you talking about?" Sylvester reached for Rick's hand. Rick hesitated for a moment. The cameras had both of them in frame. Murmurs began among the audience. Then Rick took Sylvester's hand. 2 hands, in front of the whole world, clasped together. "Rick isn't just a friend, Joan." Sylvester's voice was clear. There was no hesitation. "He's my boyfriend. We've been together for 5 years. And the world should know. Because love isn't something to hide." Time stopped in the studio. Literally. The audience froze. Some mouths hung open. A few rubbed their eyes, trying to believe what they heard. The production crew panicked. The director was shouting in the control room, "Should we go to commercial?" But the sound engineer replied, "No, keep going." Joan Rivers recovered with her famous professionalism. This is incredibly brave, Sylvester." There was shock in her voice but also respect. She turned to Rick. "Rick, were you part of this decision?" Rick cleared his throat in front of the microphone. "Yes. I've loved Sylvester for 5 years. And we can't hide anymore." Hiding is like dying. Among the audience, a few people started applauding. But not everyone was applauding. Some audience members looked uncomfortable. One woman got up and left the studio. One man had his arms crossed, staring hard. But some were in tears. A young man stood up and shouted, "We love you, Sylvester." Joan tried to get the situation under control. "Sylvester, are you worried about the effect this will have on your career?" Sylvester smiled. "Of course I'm worried. Tomorrow, my record company might fire me. Radio stations might stop playing my songs. Concert venues might cancel. But you know what, Joan? When Patrick Cowley died, I realized he never got to live his real life. When Rock Hudson died, the man he loved couldn't even mourn at the funeral. Before I die, I want to live my truth. I love Rick. And the world knows it now." The applause in the studio increased. But still, there were some hard looks. Joan turned to Rick. "Rick, does your family know about this?" Rick's face went white. "No. They're finding out right now. I know they're watching the program." Joan's eyes widened. "So your family is finding out right now, live on air?" Rick nodded. "Yes. And I know they'll be in shock. But Sylvester's right. If we don't speak now, when will we?" At that moment, one of the production assistants handed Joan a note. Joan read the note and looked at Sylvester in astonishment. "Sylvester, our phone lines are jammed. Hundreds of people are calling. Some are supporting you, some are criticizing you." "I know," Sylvester said. "But I spoke. And now, I can't go back." As the program continued, Rick's cell phone started vibrating. When he pulled it out, he saw MOM on the screen. The color drained from his face. Joan noticed. "Rick, is your phone ringing?" Rick looked at the phone with trembling hands. My mom's calling." A deep silence fell over the studio. Joan thought quickly. "Do you want to answer it? Live on air?" Rick looked at Sylvester. Sylvester nodded. "Your call, baby." Rick took a deep breath and answered the phone. The studio crew immediately directed the microphone to his phone. "Hello, Mom." The voice from the other end of the line echoed through the studio speakers. Lucy Cranmer's voice was shaking. "Richard James Cranmer. What is the meaning of this? What are you doing on television?" "Mom, Is this true? Is what you're saying true?" There was panic in Lucy's voice. And anger. And disappointment. "Are you with this man? For 5 years?" Rick's eyes welled up. "Yes, Mom. Yes, I've been with Sylvester for 5 years." Everyone in the studio held their breath. Lucy's voice was close to screaming. "How could you do this to us? The whole neighborhood is watching, Rick. Everyone at church is watching. How could you embarrass us like this? Mom, please. How did we raise you? Where did we go wrong? This is a disease, Rick. You need to see a psychiatrist." Tears streamed down Rick's cheeks. "Mom, this isn't a disease. I'm happy. For the first time in my life, I'm truly happy." "Happy? You're happy by destroying your family?" Lucy was crying. The studio audience witnessed this raw emotional moment. Some were crying. Some were shaking their heads. One woman shouted, "Leave your son alone." Rick tried to speak. "Mom, please understand. I love Sylvester. He's a good person. If you knew him. I don't want to know him. I don't want to know the man who stole my son from me." Lucy's voice was filled with pain. "Your father won't even say your name anymore. He goes into your room and cries. He looks at your pictures and cries." Rick couldn't take it anymore. "Mom, I'm sorry. But I can't change." This is who I am. I've always been this way." There was a long silence. Then Lucy's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then you're not my son anymore." The line went dead. Everyone in the studio was in shock. Rick dropped the phone. He buried his face in his hands and began sobbing. Sylvester immediately embraced him. In front of the cameras, in front of millions of people, two men held each other. Joan Rivers' eyes filled with tears. Among the audience, some had stood up. It was unclear whether it was applause or shock. Joan, holding her microphone, spoke. This is one of the most striking moments in television history. Rick, I'm so sorry." Rick lifted his head. His eyes were bright red. But there was determination in his voice. "No. Don't be sorry. I knew this risk. But Sylvester was right. If we don't speak up, there's no change." As the program continued, a man from the studio audience stood up. "This is disgusting," he shouted. "Showing this on television is immoral." Joan intervened. "Sir, please sit down. Or leave the studio." The man chose to leave. A few more people left with him. But the rest stayed. And some began to stand up. A young woman was applauding through tears. An elderly man was nodding his head. "You're brave, son," he said to Sylvester. "You're brave." Joan decided to end the program. "Sylvester, Rick, thank you so much. You made history here today. The viewers will decide whether this was courage or madness. But I know this, you were honest." Applause rose. There were still boos. But the applause was louder. Sylvester and Rick stood up. Hand in hand. In front of the cameras. In front of the world. And they weren't hiding anymore. As soon as the program ended, chaos began backstage. Sylvester's manager Tim McKenna was shouting on the phone. "Do you realize what you've done? The record company is going to freak out." But Sylvester seemed calm. "Let it be. Let it end." Rick was still in shock. His mother's last words echoed in his ears. "You're not my son anymore." Sylvester took him in his arms. "You're not alone. I'm here. I'll always be here." Joan Rivers came backstage. There were tears in her eyes. "Sylvester, I don't know what to say. This was incredible." She hugged Sylvester. "You're a real hero." "I'm not a hero, Joan," Sylvester said. "I'm just someone who's tired. Tired of hiding." When they left the studio, reporters were waiting at the door. Questions were flying. Sylvester didn't answer any of them. He just held Rick's hand and walked. On the snow-covered New York streets, two men walked hand in hand. For the first time, without hiding. For the first time, without fear. When they returned to the hotel, the phone was ringing like crazy. The first call was from his younger sister Sarah. "Big brother, Mom and Dad are really upset. But I understand you. You're brave." The next caller was Sylvester's mother Letha. "Son, you did it. You really did it." There was pride in her voice. "I want to meet Rick." But the calls weren't all sweet. Fantasy Records lawyer filed breach of contract. Manager Tim resigned. Radio stations pulled songs. Concert venues canceled. Rick and Sylvester sat in the hotel, watching the news. Some channels called it a scandal. Some called it courage. That night, Rick couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about his family. Sylvester sat beside him. "Do you regret it?" Rick thought for a long time. "No. But I'm in pain. Losing my family, it hurts." "Maybe you didn't lose them. Maybe they just need time. What if they never accept it? Then we'll build a new family. There are thousands of people in Castro. They're all family. The next morning, newspapers were filled with news about Sylvester. The headline "Disco Star Confesses Live on Air" was everywhere. Letters started arriving in Sylvester's mailbox. Some were filled with hate. Rick was devastated when he saw these. But Sylvester threw them in the trash. Forget it. There will always be haters. But there were other letters too. A young man wrote, "For the first time, I thought maybe one day I can be brave too." A mother wrote, "After seeing you, I called my son. We made up." These letters warmed Sylvester's heart. "This is why we did it," he told Rick. "For these people." In Castro, when Sylvester and Rick went out on the street, people applauded them. A woman ran up and hugged Sylvester. "You made us feel strong." A man shook Rick's hand. "Now you're part of our family." In late 1987, Sylvester's health began to deteriorate. Constant fatigue, weight loss, persistent cough. Doctors ran tests. And when the result came, it was terrible. AIDS. Rick was with Sylvester when he was diagnosed. The two men sat in the doctor's office and heard the word. That word meant a death sentence back then. After Sylvester got over the initial shock, he turned to Rick. "Do you regret it? Do you regret that we went on the Joan Rivers Show?" Rick squeezed his hand. "Never. Because after that moment, we really lived. Without hiding, without fear. Every day I spent with you was a gift." Sylvester's last concert was in October 1988 at the Dreamland nightclub in Castro. 20 minutes before going on stage, he had collapsed backstage. Rick and his crew wanted to call an ambulance. But Sylvester objected. "No. I want to go on stage one last time." That night, when he walked on stage, the crowd gave him a standing ovation. For 5 minutes, there was only applause. Sylvester looked at the crowd through tears. "I love you. All of you. You taught me what it means to be real." While singing "You Make Me Feel Mighty Real," his voice cracked. But the crowd continued the song for him. 5,000 people, as one voice, finished Sylvester's song. That moment wasn't just a concert. It was a farewell. On December 16, 1988, Sylvester James Jr. passed away. Beside him was Rick Cranmer. His last words were of his love for Rick. "My time with you was my most real moments." At the funeral, there were thousands of people. LGBT community leaders, music industry names, Castro Street people. And in the front row sat Rick Cranmer. Next to him was Lucy Cranmer. His mother had come to be with her son. Robert hadn't come. But Lucy had. And that meant something. Rick gave a speech at the funeral. "Sylvester taught me what it means to be real. That night on the Joan Rivers Show changed our lives. I lost my family. But I found myself. And I found Sylvester. I don't regret it. I'll never regret it." In his will, Sylvester had donated all music royalties to AIDS charities. For those who can't speak because of this disease, who can't be real, he had written, "Fight for them." Years later, Joan Rivers recalled that night in an interview. "It was one of the most important moments of my career. Sylvester, in that studio, changed the world a little bit." After that moment, others started speaking up too. Ellen DeGeneres, Elton John, many people. They all walked the path Sylvester opened. Rick Cranmer lived many years after Sylvester. He kept his memory alive. He participated in documentaries, told his stories, donated items to museums. "People ask me if I regret it," he said in an interview. "Regret? I sat hand in hand with the love of my life in front of the world. My family rejected me. But I stayed true to myself. What's there to regret?" In 2005, Sylvester was posthumously inducted into the Dance Music Hall of Fame. Rick attended to accept the award. After the ceremony, Lucy Cranmer stood at the back. Rick was surprised. Mom? How did you get here? Sarah bought the ticket. She said I needed to see you. She paused. I was so cruel. I told you you're not my son anymore. But I was wrong. You were always my son. Rick hugged his mother. After 19 years, he really hugged her. That day, Lucy visited Rick's home. She saw Sylvester's photographs and the videotape of the 1986 show. Can I watch that night? Lucy asked. They watched the tape. When her own words echoed, "You're not my son anymore," Lucy bowed her head and cried. I was so cruel. But you're here now, Rick said. That matters. Lucy looked at Sylvester's photograph. I wish I had known him. He really made you happy. Yes. He made me very happy. That moment on the Joan Rivers Show changed thousands of lives. Young people found courage. Families learned to accept. In the 1990s, Ellen DeGeneres mentioned Sylvester when she came out. He did it before me. And took a much bigger risk. In 2015, when same-sex marriage was legalized, Rick gave an interview. Sylvester just wanted to tell the truth. But telling the truth started a revolution. That tape is now in the Smithsonian Museum's American Cultural History section. Every Pride Month in Castro, Sylvester's songs play. You Make Me Feel Mighty Real has become an anthem. And that moment in that Joan Rivers Show studio is now part of history. Two men, hand in hand, in front of cameras. As the world watched them, they told the truth. And that truth broke chains. Opened doors. Created paths. Maybe you were at the TV that night too. Maybe you were shocked. Maybe you applauded. Maybe you cried. But you didn't forget that moment. Because that moment wasn't just Sylvester and Rick's. That moment belonged to everyone who refused to be invisible. And today, thanks to their courage, millions of people can live freely. Because Sylvester and Rick, in 1986, in a studio, clasped their hands together. And they told the world, we are here. We are real. And we're not hiding anymore.